6:34 is our time here on the Breakfast Roundtable on Sky 99.5 FM. And we're going to dive straight into the biggest story that is trending for today. This is the front page story. Poor judgment. As Caesar steps back down to magistracy, admits she didn't tell CJ of unfinished cases. On the front page of Your Guardian today, a photo of Marcia Ayres Caesar and the Chief Justice Ivor Archie after she was sworn in as a judge earlier this month. But of course, this photo, I guess this is all that she would have to remember that moment by, because she's decided to step down. And with a little perspective, we've got on the line with us Senior Attorney at Law Martin George. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Jessica. Good morning, Edison. Good morning, Dr. Wayne. And good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Martin George, this must have been a terrible, terrible experience for Chief Magistrate Marcia Ayres Caesar to be elevated to the High Court bench, something which I guess everyone who studies law, it's considered a pinnacle or one of the high points of a legal career, and then to have it tainted the way it has been tainted with the to and fro and all of the negative commentary, and then to have to do this. I mean, she must be in a not feeling well at all this morning.
Well, apart from not feeling well, Jessamine, there's a question of credibility. That I think is something that is not going to go away easily in terms of the loss of credibility, because one way or the other, she has been stained by this entire episode.
Her whole career is now ruined.
This is, well, I mean, I maybe ruined might be a bit melodramatic, but the point is, it certainly leaves a stain that is not going to wash away easily. Mm-hmm. Because when one considers the fact that you have one way or the other, whether it's her fault or not, a scenario where basically it is being now said that she did not admit or she did not reveal or she failed to disclose, whichever way you want to, frame it or phrase it, it almost amounts to some level of deception that may have taken place, or maybe a failure of due diligence on the part of those who did this selection. So the point is that there appears to be a whole mess here, but the point is she's at the center of it, and it's her name and her reputation, I think, that would suffer the brunt of the damage here, and particularly in light of the fact that she resigned. Yes. I don't know, necessarily who may have been her advisors, but I think it's almost as if the public will view her tendering her resignation as some sort of admission
of guilt.
Yes, and that coupled with the accompanying statement, so there are several issues still alive here, because your credibility now, going back even as chief magistrate, among your peers, among your fellow magistrates, how are they going to view you? What is going to happen to the respect that they may have previously held for you? Mm-hmm. Because it would appear that you were reaching your hand, putting your hand in your hat where your hand could not reach, and now you have been brought back down to earth. And, there are so many things going on here. And then, of course, the question that, is it that you as chief magistrate fails to disclose relevant material particulars? Then how are you now to be judging any witness who comes before you and saying, well, you have not been truthful with the court, when, somebody could basically make the case and say, well, maybe you were not truthful with the Judicial and Legal Service Commission when you did your interview. So, this is, I tell you, Jessamine, this is not the end of the scenario. I could see attorneys using this against her if she's to preside in any matter. So,
Martin George, my inner conspiracy theorist is hopping up and down all over the place right now. And I remember an interview with Israel Khan yesterday that took place with Hema Ramkisoon on the Morning Brew. And there are certain things that he said. He said, I am happy for the woman to have this appointment. I believe that she will do a good job. the person that I know, she's a good a legal mind, etc., etc., etc. He said, knowing her as I do, I am sure she would have told the Chief Justice that she had all of these cases pending. This is from one of the most senior counsels that we have in the country, who said, knowing the lady as I do, and I am so upset about all of this controversy surrounding her appointment to the High Court bench. One of the most senior counsels saying this. And then this morning we have, look at what we have on the front page. So my inner conspiracy theorist is saying, did someone elect to fall on a sword to bring an end to the bacchanal?
If that's the case, it's very noble, but the point is the damage that you take and the risk that you take to your career going forward is something that you alone will bear. Nobody's going to be there sharing that burden with you. So if it is that you opted voluntarily, or maybe you were coerced or asked to basically be the fall guy in this scenario, then I just hope that they considered all the negative fallout that is going to
indeed.
Because here's the next thing with Jessamy. I think we need to examine whether there are any legal implications to the question of her now being supposedly reappointed.
I wondered about that myself.
Magistrate. What about succession planning? What about those who may have been aspiring to the post? How is it that you can just come back after having, demitted office? I think there are so many things that are going to be floating around with this issue. This is not the end of it. If anyone thought that this was going to be a nice, easy, clean-cut boxing in of the scenario to put an end to it, trust me, I think this is just going to open up more and more of a can of worms on this map.
And I'm just thinking, how many more careers are going to be destroyed as a result? How many more people are going to be hurt? And how much more justice is going to be delayed and denied?
I just hope that that's not the consequence of this, but there is the possibility that could happen, unfortunately.
Well, Mr. George, let's put the spotlight on the CJ for a moment. Everybody is focusing on Mrs. Ayers, but the CJ is the head of the committee, and his judgment came into focus here. So I want you to take us into the mind of the CJ this morning, because you talk about bearing the brunt of the burden here. He has to take responsibility also, isn't it?
Well, on the first aspect, I can't, at all presume to, speak for the mind of the CJ, because, I don't know what considerations he may have had before him. But the thing is, I think it's undeniable, and the general public looking at it as objectively and dispassionately as you could, you must tell yourself there was a dropping of the ball somewhere, because I think it clearly was a lack of some proper due diligence, on the part of those who would have sat down on the selection panel, because this must be a factor you take into account anyhow, whether someone volunteered the information or not. I think it's inescapable that part of your duty must be to look at those issues.
As the CJ, you should know this, right?
And as the Judicial and Legal Service Commission as a whole, so I can't see them in any way seeking to fully exculpate themselves or exonerate themselves from some kind of responsibility for the due diligence. I think, if we are practical and fair and honest with ourselves, it's difficult to, give a blanket pass to them, notwithstanding Ms. Caesar's mea culpa.
Is it then, Mr. George, that she got an offer that she could not resist, because she did say she did not tell the committee the full implications of the slate of the workload that she had. Indeed, she did inform, according to the newspaper report of The Guardian, that she did say, well, I have a couple cases. I'm translating here. But she did not give them the full impact of the amount of cases on,
Yes,
on her docket.
Edison, that makes no sense because every year at the start of the law term, there's a report that is produced as to how many cases are before the magistrate's court, how many cases are before the high court, how many cases have been disposed of. So this is something that can be objectively determined by your reviewing your statistics. So it's not a matter of, okay, I said or I didn't say. The point is these are things that can be objectively determined and found out. There's a listing. There will be a listing of how many cases are passed. There will be a listing of how many cases you have that are completed. So, notwithstanding, unless she goes so far as to say that she deliberately lied, and deliberately concealed or deliberately fabricated the information, which I don't think I've heard coming out at all, then, the point is I still think there is some kind of responsibility as far as the due diligence aspect goes.
As far as the committee is concerned, that they should have verified the information given by the chief magistrate?
Well, apart from verifying, even before you consider the person as a candidate, if it is that they hold that type of position, what I'm saying is that any fair and objective observer would consider these things as part of, the range of issues that you would take into consideration before, making such an appointment.
So all the members of the JLSCs then should resign?
Well, now, I wouldn't go that route at all because I've said it, and I've said it in many different circumstances. There were instances where people called upon Wade Mark to resign when he was Speaker of the House, and I've said that we mustn't just rush to that as our first answer to everything because there are categories of offences, if you understand me, or categories of wrong or categories of culpability. So therefore, I wouldn't necessarily say that this means that people should resign. But the point is, I think there ought to be some acknowledgement of the responsibility which you have and which you had in this circumstance. And certainly there ought to be some, adjustment going forward so that this doesn't occur again. Definitely.
Because you're saying at the beginning of the law term, everything is published as to the kind of stuff on the docket, as the case might be. So how is it now that this was allowed to go through? And looking at the height of the appointment itself, a judge of the High Court, this simply, implicating the president in this whole thing because he swore in all the members of the new judges, as the case might be.
No, I would say certainly one cannot attach liability at all in the circumstances to the office of the president because you basically would have a recommendation and an appointment. So therefore, your function, your role and function is more, in the nature of, just putting like the final officiating stamp of approval on it. But the thing is, I don't think there's a role necessarily in the president's office at that stage to do the due diligence which ought to have been done previously.
Mr. George, I think, and I need your legal approval on this, some credit should be given to the judicial fraternity, the legal fraternity, those who raised or red flagged this appointment from the inception. I know some of them were recipients of some big stones and so on, as it were. But shouldn't we commend the legal minds or the legal representatives who red flagged this from the inception?
Well, the thing is, Dr. Wayne, it's actually not rocket science in the sense that it didn't take much, legal acumen to realize that, look, if you have parted pending matters before a magistrate, and unless there are extenuating circumstances, there's a risk that if that magistrate demits office, that your matter may have to be, begun de novo, started over afresh. So it doesn't take much legal, gymnastics to figure that out. So while yes, there were persons who advocated this publicly and very vociferously. It's not any great feat of legal intelligence to have figured it out. I mean, we all know that that's the norm and that's what would happen.
But if the whistle wasn't blown, as it were, then we wouldn't be having this discussion today. Because when the whistle was blown, then everybody jumped on the bandwagon. And
what I'm saying is, Dr. Wayne, is not that it wouldn't have been blown at all, because sooner or later these issues would have come up as a matter of necessity. So it's just that, I mean, yes, persons raised the issue early, but it's an issue that could not have been avoided. It must have come up.
And we're back here on Sky 99.5 FM as we continue our discussion with a senior attorney at law and member of the Police Service Commission, Martin George, looking at the latest developments in the appointment to the High Court bench saga. Former Chief Magistrate Marcia Ayres Caesar has stepped down from the High Court benches, and the Chief Justice has scolded her, quote, he scolded her, but reinstated her as a Chief Magistrate. Well, according to Martin George, you know, there is still more to come. It's not going to be that easy to just pull that switcheroo. Israel Khan in today's Guardian, Martin George, says that she's being made to be the fall guy in this whole situation. And whether she's made to be the fall guy or not, the fact of the matter is, not just her career, but the entire judiciary itself now has, some would argue, an irrevocable stain upon it.
Well, that's the point, Jesse. And you see, issues will arise now. If it is that the Judicial and Legal Service Commission accepts that there was a misinformation or a deliberate withholding of information or a prevarication on the issue of how many outstanding matters you had, then how could they have confidence to appoint you as Chief Magistrate? You see, there's no end to this scenario easily, because then can you trust this person as your Chief Magistrate if it is that you are saying that, look, she misled us or she fooled us or she tricked us? How can you then have confidence in her as Chief Magistrate? How can attorneys have confidence when they appear before her? How can fellow magistrates who now would be under her as Chief Magistrate have that respect and confidence for the office? It's a messy scenario any which way you look at it. And this, which I think persons may have looked at as a quick fix, you know, with one person coming forth and saying, well, look, I was the one at fault. That, unfortunately, is not going to end this scenario so easily.
If you were to re-engineer the JLSC, Mr. George, how would you re-engineer it in terms of more transparency, a more open process?
Well, the thing is, I think that there are persons who have been calling for that. I think even the president of the Law Association made mention of the question of transparency in terms of the appointment. And I think it's just a question of maybe the process that, you know, is undergone in such a scenario. And maybe there should be more consultation with the Law Association, more consultation with, you know, the stakeholders in the public. And in that way, there isn't this cloak and dagger approach, and maybe these issues would have been raised prior to you even putting forth this person's name to go through the process for appointment, and therefore you would have avoided this debacle in the first place.
So is there a possibility that at a later date she could be appointed again as a judge?
Well, you see, and this is what I'm saying. That's why I keep saying there's no easy end to this, because the credibility issue is not going to go away. Because if it is that you supposedly misled the JLSC, then how could they feel confident to appoint you again as a judge? And I'm saying the same issue arises as to the post of Chief Magistrate. How could they even feel confident to reappoint you as Chief Magistrate? This is a situation where you are talking about one of the highest office holders in the lower judiciary. The Chief Magistrate's position is at the pinnacle. So if you, as Chief Magistrate, are supposedly the one who fool the whole commission, the whole Judicial and Legal Service Commission, then why should you even merit being reappointed as Chief Magistrate?
One of the other things that I'm thinking about now is all those cases that would have been put in limbo. You know, what's going to happen with those cases? Can she simply just pick up where she left off?
Well, this is what I'm saying, Jessica. I think there may be legal implications to this whole scenario. There may be legal implications. So I'm sure this is not the end of it. And as you know, lawyers can be very creative with their arguments when they're fighting in defense of their clients. So
you guys take fighting dirty to a whole new level.
We are going to see some applications, and maybe some applications even to the High Court for her to recuse herself from matters. And, you know, this is, as I tell you, this is not the end of this scenario. It's not the end of it.
You know, there was no official announcement, Mr. George, that Maria Busby Earl Cadell was acting Chief Magistrate. I don't know, an official announcement has to be made and so on. But we understand that Mrs. A.S. Caesar has been parachuted back into her old position. Is that procedure?
I feel it raises issues of succession planning, of issues of, you know, demotivation of persons who may have been aspiring to the post of Chief Magistrate and the Deputy Chief Magistrate. So, you know, it's like you just upsetting the entire apple cart. So, you know, it's like, Jessica, sometimes, you know, you see a little thread sticking out on, you know, either your shirt or your jacket, and you decide, okay, well, it's just a little thread, let me pull it. And the more you pull, the more it keeps unraveling.
Yes.
I think this is exactly what we're witnessing with this scenario. This is just the beginning. It's not the end.
Well, on another note, let me take the opportunity to congratulate you. I think you've gotten the other officer that you needed to complete your assignment.
We got one more. We're still short of one.
You're still short of one?
Yes.
So you're getting a step closer to having a full commission.
Yes. So we got one yesterday. You know,
so he is confirmed. He is confirmed because I know that the nomination was agreed to. So that means he's confirmed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And once you get the other one, does that mean that you can go ahead now and choose the next police commissioner, or are you able to do that now?
We weren't waiting on this necessarily, if you understand me, because once we had 3 members, that would have been sufficient to constitute a quorum.
Yes.
So we had been working, notwithstanding the fact that we didn't have a 4th or 5th member. So we don't have to wait until a 5th member is appointed. Our work can still go on.
Now, I hear the chair making an appeal for more funds, additional funds, $1 million outstanding monies to pay the company who is doing the firm. Where are you going to source this money from? Is it going to come from cabinet?
Well, the point is, I think the cabinet will have to make the decision in terms of the additional funding. But I have indicated that, you know, we ought to be a bit more creative and proactive in that we can compartmentalize the contract and start with basically tranches and make a start with the monies we have in hand rather than necessarily sitting and waiting for the full amount to be approved by the cabinet. Because if it is that we have an initial allocation of $1 million, my recommendation, my thinking would be that, look, you therefore break up the contract into the first phase, the second phase, the third phase, whatever. And therefore, once you can have enough money to get even the first phase started, then I would think that, you know, as a matter of practicality, and because of the fact that the public has been awaiting this exercise for so long, I would think that we ought to make a start with what we have in hand. In other words, you make do with the little you have, and you try to go along, and you seek the balance of the funding along the way.
Martin George, we're leaving it there for now. Thank you for giving us time this morning. We'll touch base with you again soon.
Thanks again,
Mr. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Martin George, a senior attorney at law and member of the Police Service Commission on the Breakfast Roundtable.
Edison Carr, Jesse May Venture, and Dr. Wayne Haywood on the Breakfast Roundtable on Sky 99.5 FM.